Hi, this is Timothy Zahn, author of Thrawn, and you're listening to Star Wars Reactions. Good for you.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance,
We are a spark that'll light the fire that'll bring the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Wars Reactions. We are so glad you're back with us this week, and we're so glad to be back this week. I know it's been we're running a week off, and we'll explain everything here in a few moments. But we're glad to be back. So let's get some introductions out of the way. In case you have forgotten, my name is Aaron Harris. I am one half of your hosting team here, and joining me is the man, the myth, the legend, the 3PO to my feisty R2, the David Motters. David, brother, how's it going?
It's going, man. Just glad to be back on. I know we missed last week, but we're back on this week and ready to get some Star Wars goodness going. I'm ready to react and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And yes, we did miss a week, and definitely we hated doing that. But you know what? Life happens. I mean, we've always told y'all from get-go throughout the history of the show that we love doing this, but we're family men first, and my family needed me last week, so and some of you all online saw what was going on and knew my wife broke her foot the night we were supposed to be recording. So while at the time we were supposed to be recording, I was traveling from an emergency room, so from where she had was being treated. So it made for a little hectic week and weekend, but she's doing better. She doesn't have to have surgery, and she's hobbling around in this little boot shoe thing that they put her in. And her new nickname is Miss Gimpy. So, but she's doing well, and thank you. I just want to give a few shout outs and thank you, David, for being flexible and canceling. We literally canceled the show last minute. And I definitely appreciate your flexibility there, and thank y'all, everybody, for being patient with us through the unannounced silence, and for those of you that reached out, thank y'all for reaching out. I appreciate it. It's we're just one big happy family, and I appreciate it. So
I'm just glad she's doing better. I was worried about her having surgery, and so just knowing she doesn't need it is wonderful.
Yes, that was good news. We got we're recording this Thursday. We actually got that news Monday that she didn't need it. So that kind of was a load off our shoulders. So it was definitely good news, because I was already trying to figure out how we were going to pay for the surgery, but thank God we don't have to. So
Right, that's right.
But with that being said, we haven't been able to talk a lot lately because I've been dealing with this. But how was your May 4th, brother?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before, right there at the end of April, and ended up watching Tales of the Empire in the morning, started it off. Then I went to my local comic shop and picked up the 2 Star Wars free comics that day, right? Free comic book day. And then that evening went to the 25th, anniversary of The Phantom Menace. And my wife and I went and saw it on the big screen. And it was really cool to see it back on the big screen. I did go back in 2012 when they put it in 3D They didn't end up doing that. I guess, they didn't put episode 2 or 3 out in 3D, but they did episode 1. But I was there back in May of 1999, so I've seen it the 3 times it was released. So it was really cool to see that. And so it was really good. May the 4th. Were you able to do something a little bit after that?
Oh, well, it ended up being a long weekend for me that weekend, as well as I had family in town. So no, I did not get much entertainment that weekend. I did watch episode 1 on my TV at the house while I was doing laundry at 10 o'clock at night. And did stay up extra late and followed it up with episode 2. So I got some Star Wars in, but spent most of the day with family in town and everything, it's good. My parents are getting up there in age, so when they're in town, I try to spend as much time with them as I can. So it was still a good weekend, all things considered. And then just never did make it to the theater, man. I wanted to, because I had a lot of great plans, and they just kind of went to the wayside. So
it happens. It totally does. And but you know what? 2 days ago, May 14th, someone turned 80 years old.
Yes,
the maker himself.
Thank the maker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. The George Lucas turned 80, man.
Yeah. And then of course May 25th is another Saturday coming up. A lot of Star Wars fans considered that to be Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
Not just May the 4th. So the whole month. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it should be officially May should be officially Star Wars month.
Hey.
So we have May the 4th, May the 5th.
Yes.
25th, George Lucas's birthday. I mean,
and then
there's a lot of greatness.
Yeah. Well, and then all the days that the Star Wars movies have premiered.
Yep.
In the month of May. So it's big time. But it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I do have a factoid for our listeners. But, Star Wars Month, Mental Health Awareness Month. Hey, Star Wars is good for your mental health. And so there you go. I think it all fits.
Well, it's great for ours. So
that's right.
we David and I tell our family and our friends that this is our break for the week, when we sit down and talk to each other and talk Star Wars. It's our mind clearing break for the week. And it truly is.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk Star Wars, buddy. We got some great things to talk about. Of course, David alluded to it a few moments ago. May 4th was the premiere of Tales of the Empire, the 6-episode short, similar format to that of Tales of the Jedi. That came out, was it last year or the year before?
Year before, 2000. Last year was Visions 2.
That's right. Wonder if that means we're getting Visions 3 next year.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That would be cool. First, season 1, I wasn't too keen on. Season 2, I thought was incredible.
Yeah.
So, high hopes for 3. If not that it's been announced, folks. I'm not saying it's been announced. Nothing has been said about it. But the success of it tells me there should be another one.
I would think so. Yeah,
I would think so. But we're talking Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
You can go back to 2 years ago and listen to the Tales of the Jedi episodes if you want. They were really good. But we're talking Tales of the Empire tonight. And of course, that was the 6 episodes. There were 3 episodes based on one character, 3 episodes based on the other. So we, as we did with Tales of the Jedi, are splitting this into 2 episodes. Since each 3-episode arc focused on one character, we're going to discuss one in this episode. And our next episode, which will be episode 175, we will discuss the other character. So, David, a lot of people are asking, well, if we're doing that, Who are we talking about this week?
Ah,
You
Morgan
want to tell?
Elsbeth. Yeah, Morgan Elsbeth.
That's right. Morgan Elsbeth. We are talking about the 3-episode arc, talking about Morgan Elsbeth. Morgan, of course, is the character introduced first in The Mandalorian, but then played a pivotal role up until she died in the Ahsoka series. So fantastic character. 3 episodes. The first one was Path of Fear. This one, of course, was directed by Nate Villanueva. Of course, all of them were the story was written by Dave Filoni. So fantastic. And of course, all 3 episodes that we're going to be talking about, the script itself was actually written by Amanda Rose Munoz. So the story developed by Dave Filoni, written by Amanda Rose Munoz. But Path of Fear, which was the first episode of the arc, directed by Nate Villanueva. This episode showed a young Morgan Elsbeth as part of the Night Sister clan, and of course shows the attack by Grievous and the droid army on the Night Sisters, essentially wiping them off the face of the planet. And young Morgan's revenge begins her journey of revenge after losing everything there on Dathomir. The Path of Anger, which was the 2nd episode, was directed by Stuart Lee. This episode, Morgan is approached by a potentially powerful ally. I'll give you a hint. He likes art. And of course, the 3rd and final episode of the arc, The Path of Hate, was directed by Nate Villanueva again. And this episode basically was about an offer. Carabast. I got tongue tied. Carabast. Let's start that over. Well, then, this episode was about Morgan being offered the chance to stand trial for her crimes. Morgan instead seeks her destiny. Dun, dun, dun. So let's kick off our discussion with initial reactions. David, May 4th, you watched it for the first time. What were your thoughts about the Morgan Elsbeth arc of Tales of the Empire?
Yeah, I mean, just like I enjoyed Tales of the Jedi. I really enjoyed these as well. And, I know fans of various IPs have often said the quote, and you and I have said it before, it's, I didn't realize I needed a story or movie, etc. of blank. Well, I'll mimic that statement and say I did not know, that I needed stories on Morgan Elsbeth or Barriss Offee, but I did. And I would just add that the timing, I think fits so well with the Ahsoka series that you mentioned a few minutes ago and the Kenobi series, really Mandalorian as well, season 2, where we do see Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth come on the scene. So I really like how they fit in with those series. How about you?
Well, for me, I actually really enjoyed the story we were getting told. After this was something I actually wondered about since we first were introduced to Morgan in The Mandalorian, because how was she connected to Thrawn? I mean, I read all of Thrawn's books, the Timothy Zahn Thrawn books, the new ones, as well as the old ones. And of course, there's no Morgan Elsbeth mentioned, of course, which things change, and so be it. So I was curious to how she got, and of course, we didn't see her in Rebels. I was curious to see how she got connected with Thrawn. And this was the perfect setup for this. This journey of revenge kind of has me scratching my head a little bit, though. It leaves me asking a few questions, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. But I love how they took this three 15-minute episodes and bridged the gap from the Clone Wars to Ahsoka and made a connection to Rebels. It was great. I did enjoy it. It was a great story. It was a great arc of stories, which were fantastic. So I enjoyed it. So let's jump into our talking points here. So we're not going in any particular order. We're just kind of talking about everything as a whole. But we would be dismissed if we didn't jump into the first episode of the arc, which was, of course, Path of Fear. And, of course, discuss the fact that we are seeing this attack on Dathomir from a different angle. Because we saw it in the Clone Wars. We saw the assault on Dathomir by the droids and the clones, or not clones, the droids and Grievous against the Night Sisters. And we saw that happening. And we saw it kind of from, mostly from, oh my gosh, I just blanked on her name.
Well, from Asajj Ventress.
Asajj Ventress, thank you.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So we saw from Asajj Ventress's point of view, which was a unique perspective because she was a former member of the Separatists, but still a Night Sister, and she'd gone home after being rejected, and of course we see it from her perspective, but this time we're seeing it from the eyes of Morgan Elsbeth, who was essentially a youngling. I guess if you had to compare it to a Jedi, she was a youngling, maybe a Padawan of age at that point. And we see her, dealing with the fighting and the violence and the death and the destruction and the loss there on it. And it was a very unique view. Talk to me about Path of Fear. What were your reactions to seeing everything that Morgan dealt with and how she was handling it?
Yeah, well, I did want this as a talking point for you and me. I do like it when they do these different angles, from a certain point of view kind of thing. And when I was watching Path of Fear and watching Morgan and her mother and the other Night Sisters battle, I was kind of looking in the background to be like, can I see Asajj and some other ones that, like the other two, I should grab my book by Jason Fry that shows all the characters of the Clone Wars, but I think was it Karis and another one that fought with try to kill Dooku. So I'm looking in the background for them, but I do like that when they do that. Not all the time, but this one I really did. I really liked. I'm like, wait, I know this. This is, the episode Massacre, and I have to say the way that they portray Grievous in this is more than what do we say, the mustache twirling villain. I mean, he's really, really mean and cruel in this. I mean, more than I think I've seen in other shows, episodes of Clone Wars and stuff like that. But I really liked it. And then, of course, for Morgan, again, we see really just a tragic start, right? And then, of course, by the end of the episode, we hear the matron, right, of the Mountain Clan say, she sees Morgan's life ending in tragedy, which we end up seeing at the end of Ahsoka. So begins with tragedy and in essence ends that way when Thrawn's like, hey, you need to do this for us. And she does, Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Grievous, because we're looking at these episodes, and especially this attack, from the point of view of Morgan. And when we're watching Clone Wars, when you watch Clone Wars and you watch all the portrayals of Grievous, it's the same Grievous we see in Revenge of the Sith. He's kind of hunched over. He's got the wheezing and the coughing and the hacking going on, but he's more hunched over in his approach. If you notice from Morgan's point of view, there's no hunch. This is a straight up. He is standing straight up. He is making him even more ominous and evil than from her point of view. And it's little things like that which makes me enjoy these looks at a different angle of the same story we already know.
Yeah.
Oh, whether that was on purpose or not, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I thought that was a very unique perspective there. Even down to even when you jump into the second episode with Thrawn, which of course was Path of Anger, when we first get the glimpse of Thrawn, he's not in that crisp white uniform. He's in a naval uniform. He's in the gray naval uniform. He's an admiral now. He's not in the crisp white because he's an admiral in this. He's not the Grand Admiral yet, which we know he gets promoted to that right before he appears in Rebels for the first time. So we know where this is set at that point. So he's in more of that, what we see most of, like Admiral Pettit or Piet would have been in Empires or Return of the Jedi, whichever one. I'm mind blanking which one he was in, but he was in that grayish color uniform, which I thought was cool. And he also looked younger, looked like he had a little less miles on him, and than Rook.
Right.
Was it me, or did it look like a completely different character?
Well,
same species but different character.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up because, like I like, this actually fits perfectly with you and I talking about this whole different angle, at least on the battle. And then a different, this is the first time we see Thrawn, and you nailed it, in Clone Wars style animation, right? And Rook in Clone Wars style animation. It's interesting to see how they do it compared to Rebels, and I liked the visual of Thrawn in Clone Wars animation. Rook, I mean, I don't know. I like this character, but not really. but I did like Paleon, and I kept thinking about him as part of that Shadow Council and that that episode towards the end of Mandalorian season 3, and just kind of his look and so on. So I like how they did it. It's kind of wild that we're getting Thrawn and Rook in Clone Wars animation style, but pretty cool, I think.
Absolutely. And another thing I enjoyed about these episodes as it went on, we see it starts in Path of Hate, or excuse me, in Path of Anger and continues in Path of Hate, is we see the development of Corvus, which of course we were introduced to in Mandalorian, and of course we see play a role there. So what was unique to me about that is we find out that how she kind of came into power on Corvus during the age of the Empire, promising the people to get them jobs and cut a deal with the Empire to make, of all things, the TIE Defender.
Right.
Which becomes Thrawn now. Which now we know how Thrawn, that the TIE Defender maybe it was Thrawn's baby, but it wasn't his development. Morgan and her team came up with that, which is a cool nugget of information for Rebels fans. But we get to see that development, how the people of Corvus were turned against her, and then of course with the Empire coming in with Thrawn there at the end, she was able to subjectify the people and basically turn them into imperial labor at that point, which was unique. Then of course in the last one, Path of Anger, or excuse me, Path of Hate. All these paths are making me confused. If you can't tell, Path of Hate, of course, we see how the planet gets the way it is. Because of course, if you remember when we first see Corvus in the episode, it was an episode called The Jedi of the Mandalorian, when Ahsoka first makes her appearance, at the beginning of the episode, there's this burnout forest around the city, and it's all foggy and hazy and smoky, and Ahsoka's just popping in and out with her lightsabers, taking people out, which was, oh gosh, I remember watching that for the first time. I had chills. But it was incredible to see. But now we find out why it's like that, because when we first see Corvus, when Morgan returns there, it's a lush forest, but we get to see that she is the one that burns it down after turning away and murdering representatives of the New Republic.
Right.
Which was, man, that was incredible. And then, of course, Bo-Katan's voice shows up.
Yes.
Where the New Republic calls for help, and Bo-Katan's the one that answers.
Yeah. And thus, we know why she can tell Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, go to Corvus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because Ahsoka is probably still in contact with Bo-Katan after the events at the end of the Clone Wars. So Bo probably reached out to Ahsoka and said, "You may want to go check this out."
Yeah.
So now we're connecting dots throughout the story, and I love the fact that these stories are doing that for us. Mm-hmm. But there was one thing I wanted to hit on, David, that I put in the notes, and it was basically looking at the parallels. I mean, because we were introduced to Morgan in The Mandalorian, but the parallels were of Morgan's life and Din Djarin's life. Because there are massive, their lives, the events of their lives somewhat parallel. Both of them were children when the droids and separatists attacked their village and killed everybody.
Right.
Morgan was taken in by the Mountain Clan. Obi-Wan. Din Djarin was taken in by the Mandalorian. He was trained to be a Mandalorian. He got a new family, a new code, and moved on and did good. Whereas Morgan lost everything, just like Din Djarin did, was given the opportunity to get a family with this mountain clan, but she didn't. She left. Don't know how she ended up leaving Dathomir. I'm curious about that one myself. But then she ends up on Corvus, tries to make a new family there, but ends up making them her subjects, finds a family with the Empire, which is going to bring her back to her true family with Thrawn, is going to bring her back to her true family, the Dathomirian witches, of course, the Night Sisters coming in from the alternate galaxy. So, I mean, it's very, to me, somewhat parallel in how their story started, but how Din Djarin's took him on a path that gave him family and gave him hope for the future, and put him on a path of making a difference. Whereas she is just dead set on revenge.
Yeah.
And against who? The separatists are gone. The droid army is gone. The Grievous is dead. Who is she trying to get revenge on?
Right, exactly. That's the you and I texted about this, that's the irony,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's very ironic and very unique in the story there. So, but I don't know, that was just something I thought about when I was rewatching it. Actually, today, that's something I actually thought about today when I was rewatching it. I'm like, man, her and Din Djarin had a similar start on their path, and how they have start off the same way, and how their paths can go so different. It's well, and it honestly took me back to the opening of Forces of Destiny. The choices we make, decisions we guide us on our forces. I'm jacking it up royally now, but you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, Maz Kanata's voice, yes.
But
yeah, well, that's where I think I'm really glad you brought up these parallels, because something I think about from a psychological perspective are we talk about risk factors versus protective factors, and the risk factor is for Morgan and Din are losing parents at a young age, but then you have protective factors. You have both Morgan and Din have people that are going to step in and help, but because of like these 3 episodes name, right? You hear Yoda saying it. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And that's what we really see in Morgan, whereas in Din, we don't see that, right? And so then, he, just like you said, he ends up really developing into a very different person because he's not on that path of fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And that's the tragedy, because Morgan had just as good of a chance with the Mountain Clan as Din did. But because, like you said, the choices she made, Din could have been mad and angry and done the same path as her, but she chose to do that path. And, that's why I put in the notes, the Mountain Clan, agrees with Dan Z on the myth of redemptive violence. Dan talks about that, and he's talked about it, on and off over the years. And I really thought about that during that first episode in particular, where Morgan's fear, does lead to anger, leads to hate. She wants to get those, the weaponry and destroy the droids and stuff like that. But it ends up getting other people hurt, and obviously Nolly killed the matron's daughter. And so, she's thinking, yeah, I'm going to, redemptive violence. I'm going to fix everything with violence. And ruh-roh, it didn't work out that way, did it?
Nope. It never does.
No.
Never does. So, well, one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up and go into our final discussions is the name of this series. And we got these episodes with Morgan, which tell a fantastic story, which I loved. The next episode we're going to be talking about the arc about Barriss Offee, which were great episodes as well. But the name of this series is Tales of the Empire. I don't know. For me, it just didn't fit. Was it just me? I mean, we texted that night on May 4th, you and Greg McLaughlin. Yes.
From Rebel Base Card Podcast. And when you both mentioned it, and I was like, wait, what? And then you guys made a few points, and I'm like, oh, wow. I actually, you guys make a good point. And I think you both were mentioning maybe it should be called Tales of the Dark Side.
Yeah.
For the whole thing. And I thought, I think that's perhaps, maybe, 70-30. More towards what you both said. And so I liked what you and Greg were saying, the argument you made.
Well, and for the record, the argument we were making was there was very little Empire in this, at least in our opinion. When you think Galactic Empire, you think stormtroopers, Star Destroyers, TIE fighters, overwhelming odds, subjecting small numbers. You think Admiral Piet, you think General Veers, you think those type of troops. The assault on Hoth, the assault on Mimban from Solo. I mean, these are the types of things you think of with the Galactic Empire. I don't think of Morgan Elsbeth. I mean, granted, there was one. I mean, the Empire was mentioned in just a couple parts in the second episode, but it wasn't real. There wasn't really an impact story about the Empire. It wasn't like with Tales of the Jedi. We got Tales of a Jedi. We got stories about Jedis. We got the story of Yaddle and Count Dooku. We got the story of Ahsoka, and we actually saw stories of Ahsoka with the Jedi Order, how she was when she was born, how she trained with Obi-Wan and the clone, not Obi-Wan, Anakin and the clones, which made her survive Order 66. Then, of course, post Order 66, these were Jedi that we were seeing stories about. We're not seeing any Imperial in this. Barriss was an Imperial for the first 20 minutes, right, for the last 5 minutes. of or not even that, the last 2 minutes of the first episode, and
In her,
that,
yeah,
and then in the second part,
she's
she's already drifting away from the Empire. I mean, there's no Imperial story there. There's nothing that builds the Empire in these stories, in either one of these stories. So to me, it felt like Tales of the Empire was the wrong title to put on these. It should have been like Tales of the Dark Side, Tales of the Sith. Tales of, can't believe they're not Sith. I don't know. Something other than Tales of the Empire. If you're going to do Tales of the Empire, I would have wanted to see story of General Veers. We see him, of course, he's the one that led the assault on Hoth from the AT-AT attack on Hoth on the Rebel base. We actually get an early glimpse of Veers. I don't know, and this may be a spoiler for you, David, if you haven't read it yet, but in John Jackson Miller's new book, The Living Force, we get a young Veers in that book. Which is incredible. But that's the type of thing I would want to see for a Tales of the Empire. To me, the title was just, I don't know. To me, the title was ineffective for the stories we got.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I loved the stories we got. They needed to be told, but they weren't Imperial stories.
Yeah. Well, and as time passes, they'll probably, do Tales of the Bounty Hunters. They can do, Tales of the Empire and pick out different people within the Empire. There's a lot of options out there. And so these won't be the first two, but yeah, I thought you and Greg made a great argument, and I went with it. I like it.
There you go. So one more thing before we do final reactions, my prediction, because this series will continue. And we did Tales of Jedi, we did Tales of the Empire. Here's my prediction. And again, this is totally for fun. I have no inside information. Nothing. I know nothing. I am as knowledgeless as all of y'all when it comes to what's coming up next for this. But I think it would be fun if the next one they did was Tales of the Rebellion, and they focused on Omega as she joined the rebellion as a pilot, as we saw at the end of the Bad Batch. That would be a good transition for that character.
Yeah.
And I would like to see either Hobby or Wedge, the second arc about Hobby or Wedge.
That's great. Yeah, that'd be awesome too.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
Or they could even do Luke Skywalker, because he's the one that started Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
There was no Rogue Squadron before, so he could be the one that, and we know from, well, at least in Legends, we know he's the one that founded Rogue Squadron. So be cool to see it.
Well, they've done so many tales of. There's so many options. So yeah, I agree with you. It'll continue, but I like those two. Those are really good. Good.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into final reactions, my friend. What are I'll let you kick it off. What are your final reactions to the Morgan Elsbeth story?
Well, I'm like you. I really like the stories told. I love the titles, mimicking what Yoda says, and really the titles lead into my psychology factoid coming up here in just a minute. Not only here, but in our coverage of Barasafi in our next episode. So, like the path of fear, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. I just think it's a really good reminder for people to, keep these things in mind. And, like I said, I'll talk about it a little bit more in my psychology factoid. But overall, I really enjoyed this backstory on Morgan Elsbeth.
Good, very good. Same for me. Besides my disconnect with the title, the story was incredible. I really enjoyed the story. It gave me answers to questions that I wanted to know about Morgan and her connection to the Night Sisters and Thrawn, as well as motivations for what she was doing. Of course, as always, music was perfect. The animation was award-winning superb. And I just love the story being told. I love the journey we were given. And, I love the concept they have with these Tales of. And I hope this is something they continue, because the sky's the limit with these, man. They can do as many of these as they want and have never run out of characters and stories to tell. So bring it on, man. Give me more. Of course, we want to hear from you and know what you think of Tales of the Empire. Of course, you can hit us up on any of our social media, Facebook and X at SW Reactions Pod. Of course, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Pinterest, Blue Sky, Tumblr, YouTube at SW Reactions. Of course, you can always hit us up on email, swreactions@gmail.com, or feel free to leave us a voicemail at Star Wars Reactions at speakpipe.com. David, take it away with your factoid, my brother.
Yeah. I was, Dan Z over at Coffee with Kenobi is covering these episodes. He's kind of doing out of the 2 arcs. He's covering 1 episode, then 2, and then the first episode of the Barriss Offee, and then 2. So last week, if people happen to listen in, Dan Z had Jen Sopchak-Chai on from The Long Take and Dennis Keithley from podcast Stardust, and they discussed the path of fear, that first episode. And Dan got me thinking about fear, also the fight or flight response, the news, and how Americans are behaving over the past several years. What we've all seen, even even before the pandemic. But one of the things that we know is that fear sells, right? So the news really capitalizes on fear and fearful stories. Right. Our listeners have heard me say, what if it bleeds, it leads, right? In the news. So what I've noticed over the years is that, my clients are fearful. They're scared of where the country's going. Americans are fearful, and it leads to the fight or flight response, and what we all see is many Americans choosing the fight response, like Morgan did. And it truly does lead to anger, hate, and suffering. We're seeing it. There's so many people, like when you're driving in your car, right? When you're driving and people are aggressive, the first thing I think about is, do they have a gun in the car? It's just, you don't want to flip anybody off. I wouldn't recommend it or whatever. Aaron has ended all of our recent episodes with, treat people nice, be kind. You never know the difference it'll make. But I'm so glad Aaron does end our episodes with that, because there is so much fight instead of flight. I'll talk about that a little bit more, like I said, next week when we cover the Barriss Offee episodes. But just wanted to bring that up, that, these really are timely episodes, the path of fear as well as, the path of anger and the path of hate, because we do see a lot of suffering right now in the American public. So, in a lot of other episodes, I've talked about ways to address some of this. But for now, I just wanted to give that factoid and just point out that, Dave Filoni's seen it too. So anyways, there's a little factoid for tonight.
Excellent. Good job, David. Love it. And of course, if people have questions about the factoid or want to talk Star Wars with you, how would they go about doing that? Yeah.
So there's the Twitter X. I've been saying that for a long time now. That is never changed. That's at David_Modders, Modders. There's an S on there. Instagram, just look for my name and you'll find me. And I'm on Blue Sky, and I do need to check that more. And then, of course, as I've been saying lately, if anybody uses the show email or any of our socials, Aaron would definitely pass that on to me. So there's a few spots to see me.
Very good. Of course, perfect. For me, you can always hit me up on my personal X at TA Harris 121079, or of course any of the show feeds. I do monitor those, so if you do reach out to the show, you are getting me, and I can always connect you to David from there. But we would definitely love to hear from you. Well, buddy, you know what time it is?
I'm taking a deep breath. I know what time it is.
It is time for the Star Wars dad joke of the week, folks. This is a great one, and I can't take credit for this one. I got another email from our friend and listener, Adam Young, who sent me another list of jokes, and this is straight from his list, so I think you will enjoy this. So, got to ask you, David, have you heard about Harrison Ford releasing a compilation of songs based on the original Star Wars trilogy?
I have not heard about Harrison Ford releasing a compilation of songs related to the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's going to be his first solo album, and it's being produced under an indie label.
Oh my! That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Oh my gosh!
I loved it. Thank you, Adam, for that one. That one was great. I got a great laugh out of that when that email came through. So thank you very much, my friend. Well, David, this has been a blast.
Yes, it has, my friend.
It has been, and I want to thank you, everybody, for listening. Y'all are the best. We love y'all. We're praying for y'all. Thank y'all so much for all your support and for listening in week after week. We definitely appreciate that. And I do want to leave you with something that was said in the last episode of the Morgan Elsbeth arc that just kind of really hit me as we go through our year of kindness, as I'm calling it. As she is dying, the representative of the New Republic is looking at the elderly man who was the former governor of Corvus. And as she's dying, she's talking about him not giving up the fight. She goes, "You must be willing to do your part, even if it's small. You can make a difference. Y'all can make a difference too. Just be kind to somebody. That one little act of kindness can make a difference." Thank y'all for listening. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.